There's not much worse than a disappointing sequel. You loved the original film, you're so excited for the next entry, and then it lets you down. Well, today we're looking at 10 of the biggest movie letdowns of all time. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below. Let me know, what do you think are the biggest drop-offs in movie history, where from one movie to the next, there was this massive gap in quality, production, everything like that. As I go into this, I'm not including direct-to-video sequels because I don't think that's really fair, because you're quite literally talking about the budget was, 1/10 of what the previous entry was. That's not interesting or fair. These are movies that had comparable huge budgets, usually the same cast, sometimes equally acclaimed directors, and they went off the rails. Also, there is a companion video to this over on Patreon with 8 more of the biggest letdowns in film history where the quality just went off a cliff. If you enjoy my channel and want to support it, consider joining over on Patreon, where I do weekly live streams. I got a box office show. I have one called Reaction Time. There's more content, there's more access to me, and it's the #1 way that you can support my channel. With that said, let's get started. Kicking things off, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. To be perfectly clear, these aren't in any particular order. These are just 10 movies where there was a massive drop in quality. When it comes to the original Mortal Kombat, it's not that this movie is like, cinema by the criteria of Martin Scorsese, but it is exactly what it was supposed to be. That in the middle of the initial Mortal Kombat boom, they decided to make a movie that everyone could go see. As someone that was 13 years old when that movie came out, I greatly appreciate the fact that they made it PG-13. They stuck to the primary characters. It was about the tournament. It basically stuck to the lore. And while it wasn't R-rated and it didn't have the gore that the franchise was known for and has become even more known for, it was true to what you wanted. And it was a big hit. And for decades, a lot of people still considered it the best or one of the best video game movies of all time. It was followed up with Mortal Kombat Annihilation, a movie that somehow got every single thing wrong, where they killed off beloved characters in the opening sequence. The visual effects were atrocious. There were actors that wouldn't return, so they got recast, and every single time it felt like a downgrade. The plot was nonsensical. They brought in a number of actors that gave some of the worst line readings of all time.
You're alive. Too bad you will die.
And they took what was something really simple, tournament fighter with Mortal Kombat characters, and somehow botched that, turned it into this total mess that no one was happy with, and thus somehow they did Mortal Kombat wrong. Next, A Good Day to Die Hard. Now, amongst Die Hard fans, there is a lot of debate about when this franchise exactly went over the cliff, but for me, the first 4 are all solid, enjoyable films. The original, of course, is very easily, arguably, the best action movie of all time. The third movie, Die Hard with a Vengeance, is a great sequel. Die Hard 2 is a good sequel, maybe a little bit too safe, but a good film. And then even Die Hard 4.0, Live Free or Die Hard, I think is an enjoyable film that maybe was flawed and maybe a little bit too generic for the franchise and lost some of its roots. But on its own terms, it's a movie that I only enjoy. I only enjoy the film when I watch it. And despite that movie being a hit, they put out A Good Day to Die Hard, a film which is so utterly bland, generic, and forgettable that somehow takes John McClane and makes him dull. Partners him up with his son, who's played by Jai Courtney, who kind of turned into an actor infamous for being the guy thrown into all these franchises and always feeling miscast. He's done other things since then, and where he's placed these lively characters, and I think he's a lot better at that. In particular, he did a shark movie back in June, where he's really fun in that movie. Dangerous Animals. But serious Jai Courtney just never worked. And he's serious Jai Courtney in this. And they're like off to Russia, and it just feels like they pulled some generic script off the shelf. It doesn't feel like John McClane. It doesn't feel like a Die Hard movie. There's just nothing here. There's none of the connective tissue, nothing that made us love this character and this franchise in the first place. It's from a director and screenwriter that just have totally blah, generic resumes of doing Hollywood work, but nothing that stands out, that's like, that's their thing that they're great at. And so you went from a hit movie from a director, Len Weissman, who had a franchise of his own, and then even more recently, did The Ballerina this year. And they went from that to just like completely generic. And I just don't even understand why. Why not just not make a movie if you don't have anything new, anything interesting new to do with the character? Today's video is brought to you by HelloFresh. You may have heard of HelloFresh, America's #1 choice for home cooking. They send chef-crafted recipes and fresh ingredients to your home. But this summer, they made their biggest menu upgrade yet. HelloFresh has doubled the size of their menu. That means each week you can choose from 100 different options, including new seasonal dishes and recipes from around the world. Their menu is now healthier, which means you'll feel great eating their high-protein and veggie-filled recipes, which is awesome in my mind because I'm a high-protein, low-carb kind of guy. Here's where it gets awesome. They're tastier. You can get steak and seafood recipes delivered, no extra cost. There's 3 times more seafood on the menu now at no extra cost. HelloFresh is the easiest way to cook dinner. They send you the ingredients in the right proportions. They tell you exactly what to do. And so a terrible cook like me is able to make delicious meals. The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/Sean Chandler 10FM now to get 10 free meals plus free item for life. 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's HelloFresh.com/Sean Chandler 10FM to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life. Cars 2. Now, Cars, when it came out, became this massive merchandising behemoth, but it also was one of the weaker reviewed films from Pixar at that point in time. Good reviews, but not the mammoth great reviews of every other Pixar film up to that point in time. But Lightning McQueen instantly became beloved. No surprise they decided to do a sequel to the film. And like, to me, this is just like so easily and obviously the worst Pixar film. It feels like a direct-to-video Pixar film with a totally schlocky, goofy premise about, we go from being like a sports movie and then it turns into a spy movie, which is just such a goofy turn that just like, we don't take this seriously. We're just doing a cheapy throwaway idea. That's what this is to me. But it's not a direct-to-video sequel. This was their big budget sequel to the film that suddenly Mater is a spy. And it's like the plot of a number of just these goofy, dumb comedies about the person that is accidentally believed to be a spy, and so they get wrapped up in a spy adventure. So the weird, goofy side character from the first film becomes the lead character, and we shift genres, and it's just... They did these shorts called Mater's Tales that my kids used to watch all the time back when they were 2-3 years old, and it was just goofy, stupid, little ridiculous stuff Mater did. And this movie is just 90 minutes straight of that. Just lowbrow, silly, over the top, goofy. None of the heart, none of the character work, none of the universal themes that Pixar has always been known for. And you just get a totally empty movie that exists to sell toys. And that's just not what Pixar has ever been besides with this film. Every other film, even ones I don't like, had a heart. This one has no heart. It's just a toy commercial. Next up, Happy Gilmore 2. This one will get me in a lot of trouble because it already got me in a lot of trouble. But Happy Gilmore is one of my favorite Adam Sandler films. It's probably the Adam Sandler film we watch the most in my house. It's certainly the one we quote the most in my house. When they said they were doing a sequel, I was very nervous because long delayed sequels or sequels that come out many years later don't have the best track record because comedy's kind of timely. And because Adam Sandler's comedies the last 15 years on Netflix, I don't think are nearly as good as his films from before. And what do we get? We get a movie that in the first 5 minutes, they kill off a character and make Happy Gilmore depressed, drunk Gilmore. And just right there, I was like, oh my goodness, did you just kill the movie? Did you just like throw a wet blanket on top of this whole thing and just kill all of its energy and fun? And yeah, they did. You know, they tried to use that as to give him a little bit of an arc or a journey to how would he come back around and back into the sport? But it's just such a nasty way to do it. Keep in mind, my dad drank himself to death, and I've been to rehab myself for alcohol treatment. So this, when done right, could really resonate with me and be something I went, wow, that was a really powerful story about overcoming one's demons and struggles. That's not what this was. This is a movie that couldn't decide if hiding alcohol is a symptom of a broken person or a great punchline to a joke. And that kind of offended me as someone whose life has been hurt by hiding alcohol. Beyond that, when it comes to the comedy, the first movie, of course it's dumb, it's stupid, it's over the top. But it was smart, dumb comedy. Here, so much of the humor is just cameos and callbacks. There are so many times in this movie where it pauses to go, hey, remember this character? This is their son. And that's the joke, and it's a cameo. There's I had people be like, oh, if you followed golf, then you would understand these cameos. I'm not bothered by golf cameos in a golf movie. I'm bothered by totally random actors showing up out of nowhere for no reason just to be like, hey, I'm in an Adam Sandler movie. Apparently this movie cost $150 million. Is it a money laundering scheme? What is going on here? Where did the money go? How is that even possible? Except to say that Adam Sandler probably delayed a long time doing it, and they're like, we think it'll be a big movie, which it was. Gigantic movie for Netflix. They just gave him an insane amount of money that he blew on hanging out with his friends and family, shooting a movie, and we get this crappy sequel that killed a character off in the first 5 minutes. Halloween Resurrection. Now, the Halloween franchise has always had its ups and downs, but one of the craziest fall-offs is from Halloween H2O to Halloween Resurrection. It commits every sequel crime imaginable throughout the course of this film. Where Halloween H2O was the 20th anniversary sequel to the Halloween franchise. It was very much a film of its time. It was a Halloween movie, but it was very much in the vein of a Scream movie. And it was designed to be this big showdown payoff film between Laurie Strode, Michael Myers, with this big climax action set piece, fight back, rah-rah victory. And what does this movie do in the first 10 minutes? What does Halloween Resurrection do? It undoes the victory. It undoes the ending of that film. It takes maybe the most famous, iconic final girl of all time and just humiliates her in how she's treated in multiple different ways in the beginning of this film. Why? So we can tell this story about a reality television movie at the Myers house. They literally converted a non-Halloween script about what if you went to did a reality show at a haunted house, but a killer really showed up, and converted it into a Halloween movie. So it doesn't feel like a Halloween movie. It's a gimmicked, very dated movie. And in it, Michael Myers is defeated by Busta Rhymes, who does karate on him that he learned from martial arts movies. And by Michael Myers being electrocuted in the balls.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
This is real stuff that's in the movie. I'm not joking, not exaggerating. That's what this ridiculous movie is. And it's not even that like Halloween H2O is like a legendary slasher film the way the original film is, but it was a satisfying payoff movie. And they replaced it by undoing that and giving us electrocuted balls. Wow. Number 5, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Now, one of the great film trilogies of all time is Star Trek 2 through 4. Sometimes it gets overlooked because it doesn't start with Star Trek 1, it starts with Star Trek 2, and it tracks this real specific story about the Enterprise, about Spock, and it's concluded with Star Trek 4 and a new Enterprise emerging. And each movie is different, and Star Trek 4 was a fish out of water comedy that went on to become the biggest Star Trek film of all time until decades later when, you know, ticket and price inflation and blockbuster budgets and J.J. Abrams came along, but it was easily the highest grossing Star Trek movie of that point in time that like everybody went to go see it. Just a real fun, lighthearted comedy. So coming off this commercial high for Star Trek, Saint William Shatner, I've got a picture of me with him right here. Keep it next to my desk. Love William Shatner. But of the things I love about him being a director is not one of them. St. William Shatner was hired to direct Star Trek V. Leonard Nimoy's Spock had directed Star Trek 3 and 4, so then Shatner leveraged all of this to be able to direct Star Trek V. And he had these big ideas that he, wanted to do, let's do Star Trek and What If You Found God, but it turned out it was actually the devil. So he had all of these philosophical, theological ideas that he wanted to explore that when done with excellence, maybe would be great Star Trek. I don't know that because Star Trek is true sci-fi and with the worldview of Star Trek, I don't know if you really can go into the theological category with it, but maybe there was something good that could have been there. But that's just so not the movie that we got for a variety of reasons of he's not a great director. The script that they got was not the best script that we've gotten in the history of Star Trek. And then they weren't able to get the ILM team to do the VFX, and there were all this kind of budget issues that went on, and they even some stuff in the third act, there were supposed to be these big rock monsters for this big showdown that they come out of the ground, and it was just all of these allusions to literature. And then they went to go make it, and they were supposed to have like an army of rock monsters, and they only had one, and it looked terrible. And so they had to cut that and come up with an alternative plan at the last minute. So it's just one of these movies that from beginning to end, everything about it was just kind of a bad idea. And the execution turned out pretty bad too. There actually are some saving graces in here. And Kevin Feige himself has praised elements of Star Trek V and said that there's things from Star Trek V that he tries to include in every Marvel movie. And you hear it and you go, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Were we having a good time?
God, I liked him better before he died.
All right.
But the movie as a whole is such an enormous disappointment and fall off in quality from what they pulled off with Star Trek 2 through 4, which is just a fantastic trilogy. Next up, Alien 3. I have said this many times before that this is like the movie I hate the most on the earth. It's not the worst movie. It's not that it's devoid of positive traits, but it's the movie that irritates me the most, that mashes on my toes the most, and it's specifically because the drop-off and the way that it has a drop-off. Alien and Aliens are two of my favorite movies of all time. Aliens in particular is a top 10 movie of all time for me, and this movie commits one of the biggest sequel sins that you can commit, which is to undo the victory of the previous film at the start of your film without having a story to tell or without having anything thematically interesting in what you're doing there. Aliens ends with Ripley telling Newt that she can sleep and not have nightmares. She's safe. That is literally the final line, the final note of Aliens. She goes to bed. Spoiler alert, spoiler warning, she dies in her sleep right after Ripley said that. Or maybe years passed, but as for her consciousness, the last moment is Ripley telling her something, and it was false. All the work that Ripley did to save her in the back half of Aliens was pointless because she died anyway. And you get this bleak, nihilistic film that they accidentally hired a fantastic director, David Fincher. But because they did not know they had David Fincher, they utterly wasted David Fincher. So they didn't have a completed script.
I always felt that Alien 3 was a movie, as a studio, we set out to make a release date and not make a movie.
They didn't trust David Fincher. He had no real story or power whatsoever. So you have this really well-shot version of this drab film of just endless shots of going through corridors that are really cool looking for the sets that they have, but just a movie that is just a wet blanket of a film.
The third one was so nihilistic. I mean, that word really fits it. Everybody was such a kind of despicable character.
They literally did principal photography, edited what they had, and then they finished writing the script and then went back and did reshoots to finish the film. That level of, and it was 7 years later. There's no reason to rush it. The first posters for the movie said that it was going to take place on Earth. It's well documented, all these false directions they had, but just a film where they followed up two of the greatest movies of all time by micromanaging a film, but also not having a completed script. Just like crazy cinematic malpractice while doing that, not having a completed script and killing off characters at the beginning. And it's a movie that James Cameron and both David Fincher have both like thrown under the bus.
My first movie, it's fairly well known, was a disaster
for its many cinematic crimes.
You know, Fincher has famously talked about how unhappy he was with it and how it changed. I think it's a great movie, but I think his work on that is remarkable.
In third, The Exorcist II, The Heretic. Now, the original Exorcist is widely regarded as one of the greatest horror films of all time. It is a horror film that, upon its release, was both a big blockbuster hit, but also was heavily loved by critics and praised as kind of a prestige film, which, you know, historically, horror films have not been treated that way. And this movie just had a certain quality to it in the filmmaking, the acting, the thematic depth that it was elevated. And because it was such a big hit, they decided to make a sequel. And sometimes when you do a sequel that is kind of a cash grab, you go for like lesser quality people. You don't go, it's a cash grab, so you get schlocky people to make it. That's not even what happened here, where they got John Borman, who originally they tried to get him to direct the first film and he turned it down. But this is the guy that directed the Oscar-winning Deliverance. Within the 5 years prior to making this movie, did Deliverance. So this is a guy that in that decade was a top-class award-winning director. That's who they got to make the second film. And somehow they made one of the most ill-conceived and horrible movies of all time, where even as I'm like, every time I think back, like, oh yeah, it's a movie about how like there's super evil in the world means there's super good in the world, and if death brings pain, then good must bring positivity. And so like Reagan is curing autism in the film, and you're like, what?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
And there's like a device that they put on her head that's doing brain scans. And then there's they're doing stuff in villages where these bees and locusts that like, it's just so weird. It's so out there. They made the movie because the first film was such a big hit, but it's like a movie that is so at odds with the audience of the original film once. There's nothing in this movie that is a comparable follow-up. It's just like, let's tell a totally different story, different genre, different type of mythology, continuing what came in the first movie. It's been thrown under the bus by the author of the Exorcist book, by William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist.
So I went in the screening room and I see some guys riding on the back of a bumblebee or some fucking thing was unreal. And I left.
Like, this is just one of these bizarro films that it's like, how did they so misread the room? How did they make this? Our runner-up, Speed 2 Cruise Control. No, I say runner-up. These aren't actually in any particular order, so it doesn't mean anything that it's the runner-up. The original Speed is easily one of the best action films of the 90s. That it was an interesting little concept about a bus that if it fell below 50 miles per hour, it would explode, and thus this bus is just rushing through the traffic of Los Angeles while they're trying to figure out how to get out of this tough situation. The script of it was punched up by a young Joss Whedon, and so it just has really snappy, crisp dialogue that, you know, after the movie came out, it became, you know, Joss Whedon did many different things, television, many TV shows, and Avengers. So that kind of dialogue became a little bit more common. In 1994, when it came out, like, it was just so snappy, fresh, and we hadn't really heard dialogue like that before. It solidified Keanu Reeves as an action star. In a lot of ways, it's the movie that turned Sandra Bullock into a movie star. She'd been on the rise, and then Speed came out, and everyone went like, who's that? We need more of her. And for the last 30 years, she has been this A-list member of Hollywood royalty. And because it became this big, gigantic hit, of course we needed a sequel. And what did they come up with? A cruise ship that is going fast and going to crash into a city and has bombs on it or something. And somehow it involves golf. Like Willem Dafoe is like golf clubs and he's stealing an ocean liner cruise ship. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like the tangibility of like, what if there's a bus in a city as congested as Los Angeles that can't slow down? That's immediately interesting. And it's like, you feel that every little bit of that. There's so many things that would cause it to slow down, but it's something that like someone could get on it, but you get like how would you get off? Like there's all this stuff that kind of makes it like relatable, like connected. And you're like, a cruise ship is going too fast. It doesn't add up because you're in the middle of water, and so the idea of like how quickly you're going by things when there's nothing around you, it just doesn't translate. The concept doesn't inherently work, and the nature of the action, like it's just Willem Dafoe on this boat, and so you're just trying to concoct the most ridiculous schemes to have action sequences in it. So Keanu Reeves read the script and he went, "No, I'm not doing this." So they basically trade out his character for a totally generic follow-up guy that's not his character, but just like his character. Nothing in this movie works. No, there's not a, like, they even crash a gigantic cruise ship into a city, and not even that is memorable. It's just a completely forgettable film that the only thing that's memorable is that it exists as this, why did they make that? Who thought a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean going fast would create suspense and tension comparable to a bus filled with normal people in LA that can't slow down? They're just like, it's just crazy levels of like, that doesn't make sense. But coming in at number one, Joker Folie, or however that is pronounced, one of the most insane sequels ever made. The first Joker made $1 billion. Highest grossing R-rated movie of all time until Deadpool and Wolverine came out this last year. And Todd Phillips had everybody at Warner Brothers backing up to his house with truckloads of money, saying, you can do whatever you want. We're just going to give you more and more money. So he made a $200 million sequel to Joker that was basically him giving middle fingers to Warner Brothers, to fans of the original film, to DC Comics. Like, it was like the biggest FU movie of all time. there's something about that is like puts a smile on my face that, wow, that guy does not care. That guy has got one big gigantic pair of balls. But he took his movie about the Joker and then was like, no, it's not about the Joker, and it never was. He takes his movie that is a Martin Scorsese, King of Comedy, Taxi Driver, and like rehash with a DC skin on it, and does a sequel that's a courtroom musical. Like, just so wild, so crazy, so intentionally antagonistic towards everyone. A movie that, like, it goes, all right, yeah, you guys, this is what you want. This is what you think this is. I'm going to give you the craziest opposite of that. It's wild. It's actively trying to make it onto this list. That was its purpose. There's no other interpretations of it. Like, now you can talk about, like, there are some think pieces about what Todd Phillips was doing and how he was commenting on how the fans of the original film misinterpreted and took it in wrong direction. So that's what this movie is all about. And everyone was saying what that movie was about. So then this is a movie about everyone telling Arthur, like, I understand there's think piece, all that stuff. But when you're trying to, like, you are making a sequel to a $1 billion film and you give middle fingers to your fans and to DC fans and the studio that gave you money, that's wild. And that's what this movie is. It just crazy levels of just audacity in every single choice made in this movie. And like the sort of film where you're like, how did you even spend $200 million on it? The whole film is at an insane asylum or in a courtroom. That's it. There's like one scene of them running down the street. That's it. Where did the money go? They're like literally like burning money just to like as one more way to give middle fingers to Warner Brothers for insisting they do a sequel. So without question, the wildest one on this list because it was designed to be on this list, Joker Folie. What do you think are the biggest drop-offs in cinematic history where there was a movie you loved? Boy, did you hate the next one because of what it did. Also remember there is the companion video over on Patreon with more movies that completely fell off with the sequel. Let me know your thoughts down below and keep talking movies until